In the last section, I threw you into the deep end with the size method. So we're going to write a method that returns the number of nodes in the linked list. Let's give it a shot. I'm going to flip back over to my implementation, and I'm going to immediately add the new size method. All right, so this is a rather tricky one. And this is one that's kind of hard for me to show you exactly how it works with diagrams. So we're going to immediately just write out the code, and then we'll talk about how it works. Now, some of the methodology that we're going to use in this method right here to iterate through our list is going to be used in almost every other method that we write for our linked list. So we're going to put this thing together this one time, and we're going to definitely be doing something very similar in many other methods. So if this implementation initially seems a little bit weird, don't sweat it. You're going to see the same thing like 6 more times, to be honest. So we're going to write out the code and then talk about exactly how it works. We're going to first initialize a counter variable as the number 0. So this is going to be the number, or this is going to be the variable, that totals up the number of nodes inside of our linked list. Next, we're going to get a reference directly to the head node of our linked list, and we're going to assign it to a local variable called node. So I'll say let node equals this dot head. All right, now here's the magic. Here's the neat part. We are going to say while node, and then counter plus plus, and then finally, here's the real magic, node equals node dot next. All right, so this process right here is something we're going to be using several times throughout the remainder of our linked list. So we first off get a reference to the first node inside of our linked list, and then we enter the while loop. So in this very first evaluation of the while loop, like when we first enter into it, if the linked list does not have a head node assigned to it, then the while loop is going to check to see if node is a truthy or falsy value. If this .head doesn't exist, so if there's not a node there right now, well then the while loop is going to fail the check right here, and so it's not going to run any code inside of it. If a node does exist, so if there is a head node, then the while loop will enter the body, because node will be a truthy value because it exists. Inside the body of the while loop, we will then immediately increment our counter variable because you know what? We just found one node. We know that at least one node exists. And then here's the magic part. In the next line of code, we're going to look at the current node. So this is the first one, like the head node. We will look at its next property. And remember, the next property will be either another node or the value null. And if it's null, that means that there are no other nodes for us to evaluate. We will then take either the next node or the value null and assign it to the variable node. Then we go back up to the while loop check right here, and we say, is node a truthy value? In other words, is it an actual node, or is it a falsy value? Is it the value null? And so based on that check, we either re-enter the loop or we exit the loop entirely. And that same process goes on over and over and over again. So very quickly, if we look at this in diagram format, when we enter that for loop, or the very first time we enter it, the variable node will be equal to this first node that we have right here. We'll increment the counter to say, yes, we have at least one node. And then the value of the variable node will be assigned to this thing's next property, which would be this node right here. And so the while loop goes one more time. After that, we will update the value of the node variable to be this thing's next property, which is now null. And then the while loop says, nope, null is a falsy value. We're done here. And so we stop running the while loop. So that's the trick. This is how we are going to iterate through our linked list many times throughout many different methods inside of this class. Now, one last thing here, don't forget, whenever we get some variable that we're supposed to return here, make sure we always return it. So after the while loop, I will specifically say return counter, like so. So let's check our tests and see how we're doing. And yep, it looks like our new test is passing. So I should now have 5 passing tests. And just to confirm, yeah, here we go. So size successfully returns the number of items in the linked list. Cool. So in many of the challenges that are come up, in a little bit here, on any other method where we are trying to iterate through our list, remember this while loop right here, because every other method is going to probably end up using something just like this. So with that in mind, let's take a break and continue in the next video and start working on our next function.